Do you feel like you're just going through the motions in life? This podcast is for you. A while back, I felt just like you. It wasn't until I heard that whisper in the wind, Nadine, learn to podcast. Now I'm on a journey of discovery, interviewing others who have also leaped into the unknown. I'm Nadineo, creator of the Over 50 You Are Not Done Yet show, a podcast about personal awakenings, spiritual connections, and stories of joy. Shall we begin?
I want to be that positive spot in people's lives. I think, like I said, we're all connected, that we're all worthy, that no one person is better than the other. I want to be a positive advocate for a better world, whether that's through agriculture or food or living sustainably.
Today's guest is Chef Chris Clarke, author of Clarke Wanders the World, or How a Mostly Sober, Mostly Vegan Spinster Chef Wanders a Welcomed World for a Year. Chris is also the host and creator of the Something About Food podcast, where everyone has a seat at her table. So join us as we talk about one of my favorite topics, food, in this episode titled, Let's Eat. Chris, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's a long time coming.
Thank you for having me. It is a joy to be here.
I ask all of my guests this question because as we get older and become more seasoned, oftentimes our vision, how we describe ourselves, changes. So if I were to ask you, who is Chris Clarke today? What would you say?
Well, it's funny you said all of that before that, because one of the things that I have learned is that I am ever changing. So from one day to the next, it could be this, that, or the other thing. Right now, I am a semi-retired chef, not retired in the traditional sense. I just don't want to have to work in a restaurant again. And I also am a food nerd with a podcast of my own, and I'm an author. I wrote a book about a round the world journey that I did. I'm a freelance writer. I am a culinary instructor. I am a jigsaw puzzle of many things.
A jigsaw puzzle of many things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know about your podcast. You graciously invited me on
You
your
were a
show.
fabulous guest.
Yes, more please. Loved it, and thank you so much for that opportunity. And so I'm just so excited to have you on my show. I've been looking a lot at the great work you've been doing, the people you have been interviewing on your show, Something About Food podcast, which is just lovely. It makes me hungry just listening to the people you speak with. So I want to ask you, how did you get into podcasting? How did you go from being a chef to podcasting and then writing that fabulous book that you're going to talk about?
So when I worked in restaurants for many years as a chef, front of the house, back of the house, restaurant manager, and then I started working at a cooking school, running their kitchens, managing their kitchens, and then I started instructing. And my mother was a teacher, so teaching is in my blood apparently, because I just fell right into it. And talking to people about food is something that is very natural to me. So in 2015, the job that I had went away, and I sold everything I had, traveled around the world for a year to learn about food. When I got back, I was starting to write my book, but friends of mine were like, you really need to get a podcast, because podcasts were really coming into their own around 2016, 2017. And I said, yeah, let me make something that I want to do, first of all. And I love to talk to people about food because I think that food connects all of us because we all have to eat. Whether we don't like food, like some people I've had on, and would prefer eating a gas station hot dog to anything else, or whether we are gourmet people who have traveled the world and go to five-star restaurants, we still eat. And there's still something within those two disparate identities that connects us.
I keep thinking about uh, what you say in your book, which is, let's talk about that just a little bit because we're talking about food and you wrote the book and it brings you back to podcasting. So it's Clarke Wanders, the world, or how a very sober, mostly vegan spinster chef wandering a welcoming world for a year, which
That's me.
great title.
Thank you.
The picture that comes to mind, and it just seems that was the thing that I really gravitated towards, and that was this notion that everyone should have a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's the tagline of our podcast, my podcast. It's, we invite everyone to the table. I don't care who you are, you're going to have to eat. Sit down, let's talk. And it comes from my family. It comes from my upbringing where there was always a seat at the table for anybody. We had orphan Thanksgiving and people would come by. There was always somebody showing up at our house. So that's how I was brought up. That's how I live my life. Like, I love to go out to eat with friends and family, with people I don't even know. When you and I met on that bench in Philadelphia, I think one of the first things I said to you is, hey, you want to go get something to eat?
I know, and I really wanted to, but I had to go to work.
But there were other people at that convention who I have had on my podcast, who I did get to go to eat and have made friends with. And you do make friends with people when you share food with them. And whether it's in your own home, whether it's in their home, whether it's in a restaurant, at a stall on a street, you're making friends with people, you're connecting, and you're eating. And it's just such a beautiful alchemy of flavors and tastes and experiences.
You're listening to the Over 50 You Are Not Done Yet show. In African American culture, we get a little spiritual with it. The excitement of breaking bread with people, pulling the bread apart and sharing it with other folks. It's just a joy to be able to sit down and eat with other people and passing the food along and trying different dishes and whatnot.
And being able to say, that's not for me, but I'm going to dive into that. That's the thing that I love about sharing a table. Not everybody eats the same thing or likes the same thing. And when you're at a big table with lots of things like that, you don't have to.
Yes.
And you can be yourself in that situation.
How were you able to travel around these different places being mostly vegan?
It was pretty easy in several places. In other places, it was a little bit harder. But I say mostly vegan because if I see a pastry, I'm jumping on it like it's a hand grenade. I have no self-control when it comes to pastries. But there are also places where there was amazing seafood, and I wanted to try it so that I could replicate it in a way like you see in my book that is vegan.
Right.
Like there were some in Malaysia, there were some shrimp fritters, and I replicated them in my book with oyster mushrooms. Wow. So in some places it was harder than others, but in like India, in Turkey, much easier.
Right.
Much. You wouldn't believe how much easier it was in some places than others. Iceland was a little hard. Italy was easy. And I was very non-judgmental too. Like if I couldn't find something vegan, I was okay with it. I am vegan for health. I do think that animals need to be treated better. And, we should have an idea of how they are treated and how they are raised. But my cholesterol was so high that I went vegan to lower it. And it has helped. I don't have to take medication. It's not for everyone, but it works for me.
Wow. So when did you become mostly vegan?
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And I have to say, the thing that I really have found with my podcast and with my travels and with following stuff on social media is how wonderful it is to see people of color becoming vegan for health, for animal, in numbers that I hadn't seen before in my own little white bubble, but
Mm-hmm.
because it also opens up more of the world to me, because there's food that they're making that I wouldn't have thought of. And I'm
Right.
like, ooh, I'm going to use jackfruit for that. That is a
Right.
fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing I was toying around with. So on social media, I think you probably saw it,
Hmm.
about the idea of becoming vegan. Um, I lack the knowledge of the clarity of what that actually means. So, and there are probably other people out there that don't know. Can you explain what being vegan is? Where is the line from just being vegetarian to being vegan?
So you're going to find, as in anything, there's no black and white. There's a
Hmm.
lot of gray.
Hmm.
And to get it to its most basic, it's no animal products. So no dairy, no eggs, no meat, no fish, no chicken, no poultry, nothing. And there are many vegans who won't have honey because they don't want the honeybees to be taxed in that way.
Hmm.
And yet there are vegans who will eat oysters.
Mm.
I would be one of them if oysters didn't have so much cholesterol, because I love an oyster, but the
Right.
cholesterol is what kills me. Because oysters don't have a pain center and they are grown, basically. They're
Hmm.
very sustainable. But ultimately, I think you need to find what vegan is to you. For
Hmm.
some people, vegan is raw. For some people, it's plant based, which means they don't have any oil. They have very little salt, which I cannot live my life like that. I'm Italian. I need my olive oil.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I have no judgment. Live your life how it feels best for you. And, we see these judgmental vegans in the world, just as we see judgmental anything in the world. And I am not one of them at all. Um, I say mostly vegan because probably 99% of the time I am vegan in that I don't have any animal products whatsoever. If somebody makes me a dish and it has chicken broth in it, I am not going to say no to that
Hmm.
because they have made it for me.
Right.
Most of the people I know me well enough to try and give me vegan stuff when I come by or ask me to bring something to share. And I do. And it's
Hmm.
great. I just had dinner the other night with a couple of meat eating omnivores,
Oh,
and
wow.
we had the best time. I made this beautiful potato salad with broiled broccolini and black olives, and they were shoving me aside to get to it, and they
Wow.
were eating ribs. I was eating a meat-free vegan brat.
Hmm.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. There are some vegans who are very anti the meat analogs, the meat substitutes, the
Hmm.
things that replicate meat.
Really?
Yeah, but again, it's levels. I love that kind of stuff because I miss, a brat. I miss having a burger because, again, that is community, to be able to
Hmm.
sit down with somebody who's grilling and to throw something on the grill. But also, I just love a burger, and to
Hmm.
be able to replicate that is good for me. As with a regular burger and people who are meat eating, I am not eating that every single day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when people say, well, it's not healthy, I'm like, well, neither is a burger, and I'm not eating it every single day.
Right.
So you find what works for you. Some people eat a lot more beans. I love eating lots of beans for my protein. Some people do lots of tofu and tempeh. I will have them from time to time. I take a little bit of everything personally for myself. Find what's right for you. Find what you like the flavor of, what you can cook in a way that makes you comfortable, and fly with it.
Chris's book, Clarke Wanders the World, or How a Mostly Very Sober, Mostly Vegan Spinster Chef Wandered a Welcome World for a Year, can be purchased on Amazon. Now back to the show. Yeah, for me, because I was raised as a meat eater, it's all about the texture.
Yes.
every different kind of animal, unfortunately, if we were going to talk about the animals that are killed, including fish. If you go to certain places, when they kill the fish, they try to do it gracefully. They hit it with a hammer one time on the head, you
I've
know.
seen them banging
Oh,
octopus on the sidewalk in
oh,
different countries. Yeah.
it's
No.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you go to different places. I love to travel and I love to try different things, and and push the envelope because of my small world like thinking. Um, but there's a sense of the thing that the taste that is the closest to being the most fresh, just, coming out of the water. Me
Hmm.
being raised along the peninsula, um, in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and most of the time we got stuff from the ocean.
Right.
That was just part of our culture. Um, so that part of my palate has been it's used to that. So
Yeah.
the idea of not having that would make me gravitate towards those soy burgers and other
Hmm.
um
Pea protein
meat
or
proteins.
tofu based. Yeah.
Right, right. But it is really, there's a lot to take in. I will say that um one of the great things about your book, okay, and I want to keep saying, that you wander the world and you taste different foods and you come back and you write about it, but
Hmm.
you also share so many different recipes in there. So there
Hmm.
is like no excuse to like dive into it except for the fear of being a bad cook and all the different ingredients that it takes to put it together. And that's probably the one thing that is holding me back a little bit, because
Hmm.
the seasonings in my cupboard are salt, pepper, hot sauce, not a lot. I do have white pepper, which is,
Yeah.
a little bit different. And then I just get like fresh, I'll get garlic and ginger. I'm
Hmm.
usually not the dried seasoning type
Right.
person. So, I mean, I'm a little bit there, but it is different. So, I'm excited. I was very excited reading your book, and I will say that anyone out there has time, you have to go get it, and we're going to put information in the show notes and on the website about
Thank you. And let me
Chris's
give
book.
you an idea.
Hmm.
You said about the spices. One of the best ways to do that,
Hmm.
and the recipes in the book, if you notice, go from really simple, like Moroccan pancakes, take no
Hmm.
time at all, and there's very few ingredients in them, to very complex, like some of the curries and things.
Yes.
But if you go to a bulk store,
Hmm.
even Whole Foods Market will have it in bulk, probably more so after things open up, but still,
Right.
you can buy smaller amounts of these things
Hmm. Hmm.
and use them in the recipes.
Okay.
The other thing I'm always encouraging everyone to do, and I know there's a ton of them in your area, is go find the Asian and Indian markets and wander them.
Hmm.
Even if you don't buy anything except for some fun, weirdly to us flavored Kit Kats,
Hmm.
go and wander through them. I have led tours through markets like that to show people that there are so many things here that fit not only into a vegan lifestyle but a budget.
Hmm.
Things are much less expensive in these stores.
Yeah.
The produce is often fresher,
Yes.
the herbs and the greens and things. So go and try them out. And plus, you almost always will find someone who's working at that store who will talk your ear off in a wonderful way and kind of guide you along.
Hmm.
And I would go once a week if one was closer, but I usually go about once a month.
Hmm.
And where I go in Denver, there is a huge Asian market called H Mart, which is a Korean market. And
Yes.
across the street is a Mediterranean market called
Wow.
a rash. And there they have all halal foods and things like that. So I can basically cover almost half of my trip around the world in 100 yards, walking from one store to the other to find the ingredients for the different foods that not only do I eat, but I also put in the book.
Here in Philly, we actually have H Mart, and actually in Pennsylvania, there are a number of H Marts.
Yeah.
Um, I have friends who are Asian, specifically from the Canton region of China.
Right.
So one of the most incredible experiences that I've had is with the different green leafy vegetables, and
Yes.
oftentimes they are what's left of the vegetables that Americans, quote, Americans would eat, like broccoli. You eat the broccoli sprouts, right?
Right. Not the stem.
But not the stem, not the leaves.
Yeah.
And they eat that. Or soybean leaves. Favorite. I love it. I love it sauteed lightly. Oh my goodness, the taste is unbelievable. And so there's like all these different vegetables that the stuff that we throw away, they don't. And
Well, growing up Italian, we always ate the beet greens.
oh wow.
We always ate the beet greens. And when you go to an Asian market, you're going to see turnip leaves, you're going to see radish leaves, you'll see sprouts of many different kinds, not just the mung bean sprouts, but alfalfa sprouts, radish sprouts, broccoli sprouts, all these different sprouts. But just the greens themselves, the variety of choice.
Yes.
One of the recipes in the book, which is actually pretty simple, all you need is a little oyster sauce or vegan oyster sauce, which is a thing. It's made with what's known as water spinach or anchoy.
Is it kind of stalky?
Yes, it's
glory.
very stocky.
Okay.
Morning glory. It's morning glory, which, we think of morning glory, we think of the flower, but this is the green.
Like what you hear? Subscribe, like, and share this with your friends and family. Much appreciated. Tell me a little bit more about Morning Glory.
Morning glory, when you buy it, when I got it, I think there's a picture in the book as well, but you don't have to look for it. It's a very long stemmed green with less leaf than stem, and the stems are hollow, almost like a straw. And you kind of smash them a little so that they'll soak in some of the sauce that you make. But they're very bright flavored, and as we know, eating your greens is one of the best things you can do, especially when you're a vegan, because greens are full of calcium. So you don't have to drink the cow's milk. You can eat your greens and you'll be just fine, even when you're over 50 and need more. And it's just a quick saute. I mean, you can throw it into soups and things, but just having it on its own, quickly sauteed with a little bit of sauce on it, it just like having spinach with just olive oil and garlic and salt and pepper. Simple, bright, wonderful.
You make it seem so easy. And you
It
should.
is. The only problem with spinach, of course, is you buy a bunch the size of your head and it just feeds you like a half a cup because it cooks down. But other greens don't do that. That is just mostly spinach that does that.
I want to ask you about your podcast.
Sure.
Which is still we're still talking about food.
That's all we do on that show.
Yeah. It's really it's almost like we're traveling with you in these different places locally. Sometimes you're with the person, or sometimes it's a long distance interview like what we're doing right now. But it's so amazing how people seem to find their way to food, to their passion, and bring it into their lives. Some folks do it later in life, and some folks are just they've always known this is what they want to do.
One of the cool things about the podcast is I don't necessarily interview people who are in food. I have interviewed Brian Boitano, who's an Olympic gold medalist. I have interviewed Oh yeah, Judalyn Cassidy, who's in New York City. She's a plumber. She was the first woman inducted into the Plumbers Union on Staten Island,
Wow.
and she's from Trinidad and Tobago.
Uh-huh.
And we connected on food because she's like that's what we love in Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
is it's food. So it doesn't matter what these people do in their life, they still have to eat. So one of the guys I interviewed, who is a professor down in Denver, he's a professor of Africana studies, and he writes or draws a comic called Avant Guardians, and it's about a jazz superhero in the future, right? And it's
Whoa.
all people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Niagara Falls, and I went to college in Buffalo, and we talked about chicken wings and we talked about
Mm-hmm.
pizza. So there's a connection.
Right.
No matter where they have been in the world, where they have lived, grown up, there's a connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed this one woman, Rue, and she's from North Carolina, and she just rhapsodized about the hot dog stand in her town. Like, she's like, I could go on for the whole show. And that is just wonderful to me because she's talking about a small town place. It's not gourmet, doesn't need to be, but everybody in town goes there.
Mm-hmm.
And Rue has nothing to do with food. She's a promoter for concerts.
Wow. Hot dogs say something about, a culture. It's about picnics, it's about sports, it's about family,
Mm-hmm.
and wherever you live, there's always something different that they top it with, you know?
And oddly enough, one of the best meals I had in Iceland, and one of the only things meat I had on my entire journey, was a hot dog, because they're the cheapest thing in Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
They're made out of Icelandic lamb, so they're ridiculously good.
Right.
And so many people told me, you have to try the hot dogs. And I did. And the hot dog stands are usually outside of their hot springs.
Mm-hmm.
And the hot springs are community center.
Wow.
Boom.
I love hot springs. Well, that's a
Yes.
whole nother story. Whole nother
You
story.
rhapsodized about that on my podcast. So go there, folks, and listen to her talk about it.
Definitely. More, please. Yes, that's right. Check out my guest appearance on Something About Food podcast titled More Please, episode number 46 at www.somethingaboutfood.com. Check it out. So, what other things have you been up to? I know it's a little bit tough to talk about that right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic,
Right.
which is challenging for everyone mentally,
Yes.
physically, and spiritually. But are you working on anything or dreaming about anything?
I have dreams, of course, Nadine. There's a business I want to start with a friend. I don't want to get into too many details,
Okay,
but
sure.
I am hoping on starting a business. It's got nothing to do with food, but it's one of those things where, at my age, you look at life and you're like, we can do anything. Why
Right.
not do this?
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're kind of waiting for the pandemic things to ease off, and there's going to be a while. But, I've been working on some writing fiction. I have been cooking at home a lot because of the pandemic, and I have no problem cooking at home. It's been fun to play with different things, which is one of the reasons I love being mostly vegan, is because it really expands your repertoire. And you're working with vegetables or things that you may not have used before and doing it in different ways. And I found this amazing recipe. It's called chickweed. So have you heard of seitan?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
So seitan is a protein that vegetarians and vegans will eat. And when you have flour, you have three types of flour. You have cake flour, all-purpose flour, and bread flour. Bread flour has the most protein, all-purpose has less, cake flour has the least. And the less protein in there, the less gluten. That's why cakes are so light and fluffy. So when they pull that protein out of the flour, That is known as vital wheat gluten,
Okay.
and it's very high in protein. And that flour, the vital wheat gluten flour, is what is seitan is made from.
Cool.
So I found a recipe where you take chickpeas, cooked chickpeas, and the broth of chickpeas, which is known as aquafaba, which is a whole other thing I got to tell you about in a second.
Ooh.
Puree the chickpeas, you mix in some flavorings, you mix it with the vital wheat gluten, you work it in a mixer, and it shreds like chicken.
What?
Yeah. It's really good, and it's a less expensive protein source than buying the seitan in the store because you're making it yourself, and it makes a nice big batch. And it works like chicken would. I mean, I have my niece wants me to make it so we can make chicken wings out of it because she does cauliflower wings, but she wants to do these chicken wings. I do have to tell you about aquafaba because this thing it was just figured out. I'll say 6 or 7 years ago. I might be lying on that, but about then. It's the broth from chickpeas, from the beans that you have in the can. If you drain that broth, and there's a recipe in my book for this, and you puree it, or not puree it, sorry, you whisk it in a mixer, high speed, it will whisk up like egg whites.
No.
You can make a meringue, which is in the book, pavlova, made with aquafaba, because I had a pavlova made of eggs in Australia. So I thought, let's do it with the aquafaba. You can make macarons with it, those beautiful multicolored little cookies with it. You can use aquafaba for all of those things.
Wow.
And the guy that figured it out, he called it aquafaba because aquafaba means water, bean water. Yeah.
Wow. That's just a treat alone, just that discovery.
It's also, if you think about it, it's something that people who are allergic to eggs, which is another large group of people that are going non-dairy and things like that, are looking for. And if you've ever had a vegan baked good made at a very popular bakery, you know what I'm talking about because they usually use coconut oil and that makes everything taste so much better.
Right.
But, people who are dairy free or egg free because of allergies have to find these places so that they have cakes and things. So.
Wow, that is really cool. I'm glad you shared that with us. I really am.
Food is awesome.
My stomach is grumbling as we approach lunchtime. I want something to eat. You're listening to the Over 50 You Are Not Done Yet show. What do you feel is your mission or your purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing?
So I don't have any children. I've never been married. I want to be a positive person, woman in the world. I want to be a positive female presence in the world. I want to be strong. I have a lot of children who've been in my life, whether I was related, nieces and nephews, not related, but still they're kind of nieces and nephews. I was a teacher for children. I was a coach for soccer and peewee wrestling. I want to be that positive spot in people's lives. I think, like I said, we're all connected, that we're all worthy, that no one person is better than the other. I want to be a positive advocate for a better world, whether that's through agriculture or food or living sustainably. And I know not everybody can or not everybody wants to, but they can take steps towards something. And that's what I want to be. And I hope that I am.
Do you have a motto?
What's the motto with you?
What's the matter with you?
Sorry, I totally stole that from the Lion King, which...
Yeah. There you go.
Hakuna
Wonderful.
Matata.
We got a Hakuna Matata t-shirt.
My motto basically is just let's eat. It really is. I mean, I could make up something that was, very Instagram worthy, about your soul shining and all that. But it's just let's eat because to me, that is community. Let's
Mm.
just eat.
Like what you hear? Subscribe, like, and share this with your friends and family. Much appreciated. What advice do you have for older adults in terms of living a more healthy life, especially in terms of food or just their concepts of food? I mean, when we're kids, a lot of times we're like, I don't like vegetables. And, what would you say to them to get over their fear of trying new vegetables and styles?
I am definitely an advocate of people trying something new, but I am not a pusher.
Mhm.
I had a friend, we were camping one time, a bunch of us, and as we were breaking down camp, I said, I'm going to, and he was a very picky eater, and I said, I'm going to make peanut butter and banana sandwiches for everybody so we have something to eat before we head out. And he looked at me, he was all, quizzical, and he's like, I've never had a peanut butter and banana sandwich.
Mm.
And again, he's a very picky person. And I said, do you like bananas? Yes. Do you like peanut butter? Yes. I said, try it. And he did, and he loved it.
Wow.
So take that into your own life. If you know you should be eating more vegetables, but you are afraid of vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
pick one vegetable and try it. And I don't mean eat it continuously. I think 1 tablespoon
Mm-hmm.
a day.
Mm.
Buy a head of broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
Boil it up, steam it especially, don't boil it, please, or roast it.
Mm.
Try a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If people say that Brussels sprouts are really good and you're not a fan, that's okay.
Mm.
Because Brussels sprouts are related to broccoli, they're related to cauliflower, they're related to cabbage, but try roasting them.
Roasting.
Try doing these vegetables in a way that's different than what you have tried before. Roasting brings out a different flavor. Beets, especially. Now, that being said, some people, their DNA will tell them that beets taste like dirt. That's just your DNA talking.
Mm-hmm.
But if you roast a beet and you taste that beet and it tastes sweet to you, you don't have that DNA and you like beets.
Wow. Now, beets are really good for you in terms of lowering blood pressure. A friend of mine, actually, she was a guest on my show, Bhavisha Patel. She told me, Nadine, you need to get some beets. And the best thing I could find was 100% beet powder. Yes.
Just go buy
Yeah,
some
I
beets,
know, but it's gonna cook
Nadine.
it.
Honestly. Buy some beets. Your hands are going to turn a little purple, but you're going to be just fine. No, beets are fantastic. Here's a salad for you. Roast your beets. So you peel it, you cut it into little chunks, olive oil, salt, pepper, throw it in the oven, 375 degrees until you can stick a fork in them.
Mhm.
It depends on the size.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing about cooking. Not baking, but cooking.
Mhm.
It's not an exact science. Don't feel like, it has to be perfect.
Mhm.
You're not an engineer, right? Are you?
Nope. No.
Yeah. We got a lot of engineers out here when I'm teaching classes, and I'm always like, it's not an exact science. Just roast them up. Get yourself a nice ripe avocado and a little red onion. Chop that red onion fine.
Mm.
Mix the beets with a little bit of orange juice
Orange
and
juice.
some chopped orange. Throw in the avocado, salt, pepper, a little bit of that red onion. You got yourself a salad.
Wow. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's going to be first on my list.
Yeah. Honestly, there are so many ways to prepare these things. I've made beet burgers.
No.
You can eat beets raw if you shred them on a salad. You'll see it sometimes on salad bars at like Whole Foods and stuff. They're great. They're a little bit of sweetness. You can roast them. You can fry them. You can make a hummus out of beets. Just a bazillion different things. Beet juice is fabulous with a little ginger and lemon in it.
Oh, so I need to put some ginger and lemon in my beet juice.
Yeah. If you're like, oh, throw a little ginger and lemon in there, it'll up the quotient.
Wow, that is cool. So, I don't want to say aside from cooking, but it could include that. What brings you joy?
Well, children always.
Mhm.
I just get a kick out of them. They all think they are all very unique and special and wonderful, and yet they're all the same.
Mhm.
They'll try the same tricks. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yes.
Children bring me joy. Animals bring me joy. I do a lot of pet sitting for a lot of ridiculous animals, and like the cat the other day I was watching, she would not shut up. She just was constantly talking to me. I'm like, I'm trying to do things here.
Mhm.
Um, and then, riding my bike.
Mhm.
Like I rode my bike here today, which was fabulous. I like going up into the mountains. I like camping.
Mhm.
I'm a very social person in many ways, with the food and things. So this whole pandemic thing kind of, shut me down, and it was very hard for me. But the Zoom calls have been great, catching
Yes.
up with people and catching up with people that you may not normally have caught up with, which was great because they were feeling it too, feeling very isolated.
Yes, it is really tough. And then part of that thing where you get together and share a meal, you it's harder to do that. I mean,
Yeah,
there are people, calling each other up on Zooming, having breakfast, I was like,
right.
I don't know, maybe I'll wait till later. But yeah, I do get what you're saying, and it has been tough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
But there's a lot of good that comes out of it too. And we've seen that. We've seen people being there for one another. We've seen
mhm,
people catching up with one another.
mhm,
Um, I have my cousin's wife is a nurse, and seeing how she goes to work every day and is really careful when she comes home, and
mhm.
amazing people out there doing good things. So it's been a huge positive to see us all pull together like that.
Yes, yes, it really is about mankind being kind to man.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I am so, so grateful and so happy that I finally got to sit down and talk with you and share your story with the world, to have it out there that, someone can listen and find out more about what makes you who you are and your passions and
Hey, if
everything.
they figure it out, let me know.
Yes. Definitely. I had so much fun chatting with Chris Clarke today. I hope you did as well. Remember, don't be afraid to try something new, even if it's mostly vegan. Until the next time, be well, my friends.